Okay, we're recording. Welcome everyone to the Flux Dev Meeting. It's May 15th, 2025.
Everyone. So we are getting very close to Flux 2.6 release. We have updated the roadmap with what is the final list of things to go in. I think there isn't much to discuss here. The big issue that we still have ongoing, the big chunk of work is around documentation for workload identity. And as we discussed last time, 2 weeks ago, we want to have a single doc in the Flux configuration section where we tell people all the ways of configuring Flux with workload identity. So instead of having, configuration everywhere and all the APIs, we want to create this single doc with sections for AWS, for Azure, for Google. That will also include the object level impersonation that Mateus and Dipti have been rolling out for Flux 2.6. One thing we have decided this week was that we are not going forward with object level impersonation by default. The problem I'm seeing here is that once you use, let's say you upgrade to 2.6 and the code is like today, then opting into impersonating and connecting to a cloud service, let's say a container registry, can be done solely by a tenant. If the tenant has an IAM binding to a service account, and if they add the service account field in their OCI repo, let's say, or in the Flux customization under decryption, all of a sudden, the tenant can take the decision on their own to use this cloud service. And I think it can come as a big surprise to Flux users, especially to cluster administrators, those that are responsible for setting up Flux for their teams. So we decided to introduce a feature flag, and the procedure will be, you'll be upgrading to Flux 2.6, and only the cluster admins, which have control over the Flux installation, they will have to set the feature flag. How was it called, Mateus? Was object level workload identity, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, and they can opt into this feature and then let the tenants know, okay, now you can use service accounts, you can create your IAM bindings for them. And more so, the cluster admin have the option to, let's say, I only want to enable this for source controller. It's okay to connect to, let's say, ACR, but I don't want to enable this feature for customized controller to connect to a Vault instance, right? So they can do it granularly by controller. They can enable them for all controllers. It's very simple. You select all controllers and you add the patch with this feature flag. And I think it's a safer way to roll out such a huge feature. And also the fact that we don't have implemented everywhere, right? Source controller now has implemented only for OCI repository, while Bucket does not have this feature. Also, Git repository for Azure DevOps, which is currently the only combination where you can have workload identity, also is not implemented. So I think it's fair to go with the feature flag until we have implemented this feature everywhere. And we can decide, being a feature flag, we can decide later on if this is okay to be the default behavior of Flux, we have the power to switch this feature flag. The default can be on. Then cluster admins have the option to opt out of it. But I think it's important to let the cluster admin decide on their own if they want to enable this or not. And not having a feature flag at all, basically, it's out of their control. What can you do? You are going to create an admission control validation policy and deny service accounts names, but that's very problematic because in OCI repository, a service account name is also used to attach image pull secrets. So you can't actually create a policy that blocks this feature, right? Without affecting other behaviors that are, already implemented into Flux. So Mateus is going to work on this, and in 2 weeks from now, when we hope to start the release process, we'll have the feature flag everywhere, documented, and then in the release notes, we are going to say, we are shipping this feature, but you have to opt into it through the Flux Bootstrap, Flux Operator instance. I don't know, Dipti, how you do it with Azure. There is a patch or something you can do?
To enable or disable the feature? Yeah, we have some controls over it. It's basically a Helm chart, so we have controls over it.
Can users make customized patches in the Flux controllers there?
In the Azure workflow?
Yeah.
No, it's not controlled via customizations. They're basically configuration options exposed via the ARM layer, which is the...
Oh, okay. So they can't do they can
So they
set
use
arbitrary flags in their controllers.
No, only the ones that are exposed out, and they have to do it via like Azure Bicep templates or Azure ARM templates, or using the portal or a CLI, the Azure CLI.
But they can set flags for controllers, right? This is already a feature, right? You can set the multi-tenancy flag or whatever, right?
Yeah,
but only the ones they expose. That's what she said, right?
Yeah, I think it's controlled via like hooks in our Helm chart. So once we expose it out, then we can kind of control that.
This is a feature flag. So it's one flag. It's like Kubernetes. It's a feature gate, sorry. Right? So you have one flag, then you enumerate the gates that you want to open and close. So I think you already
it's a map of string to Boolean.
Yeah. I wanted to understand, like in the Flux install workflow, the cluster role binding, which kind of gives the notification controller the ability, or like any Flux controller, the ability to kind of create tokens for all namespaces, the token request. That is in the Flux install enabled in the Flux install workflow. So is that also something that will be for all controllers?
Yeah, we're shipping that. Like if you, I don't know how you do it, but like if you build on our distribution is gonna have this RBAC role, this like RBAC rule in the cluster role that we bind to all of the controllers, which is the CRD controller something, essentially, yeah.
So I wanted to understand, is that also behind this feature flag, or will that be enabled
the
by
code
default?
is behind. Yeah, the code is like with 2.6, the controllers will gain this permission to create tokens. But if you don't enable the feature flag, that code path will never be executed because there is nothing else in Flux that creates tokens. So we give the permission by default, but we don't enable the code path to use that permission, right? Now, I mean, it's up to Azure how they want to implement that. You can create some kind of check in the UI that adds also the feature flag and the permissions. It's up to you, but we don't have that kind of facility in the CLI where you say, oh, I have this feature flag that all of a sudden has to add all these things to some YAMLs or whatever. We are not.
No, yeah, I
that
think in
kind of,
Azure you can control that also via some of the configuration options. I think I checked, but I just wanted to
yeah.
understand from the Flux install perspective how we were handling
Yeah,
it. Yeah,
so from
makes
the Flux
sense.
install, you get the permission there, the code path is not executed, you have to opt out or you have to opt in for each controller that you want to enable it. And
Mm.
this will be, this feature gate will be in source controller, will be in customized controller, reflector controller, and notification controller. We don't have it in image automation controller because we haven't yet implemented
The source account field.
Multi-tenancy.
for Git. But once we add it to source controller in Git repo, that can't just be released like that. We need to add the feature flag to image automation controller because image automation controller basically discovers the Git repo and does all the things on its own, right?
Mm.
You know very well because you worked on the GitHub auth and
Mhm.
it's the same
Yep,
stuff
yep.
basically.
Mhm.
But behind the feature flag. So it's in the power of the cluster admin to say, yes, I want this or no, I don't. And by default, because we don't have we don't have it implemented everywhere, it will be off. People have to actually opt in and we'll see what feedback we get later on, how things change in upstream Kubernetes, all the cloud integrations. There are so many unknowns. If this future will survive in 1-2 years from now everywhere, right? Do you have any feedback on what the AKS team thinks around impersonating random service accounts from the Flux controllers?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I had a meeting with like a few of the architects and the PM yesterday, and I think they had two main concerns. One was probably like just they are kind of actively moving towards tightening the controls around workload identity. Like currently, the AKS workload identity feature that is there, that was like a very vanilla release. It has a lot of drawbacks. So they are working towards like addressing those drawbacks. Specifically to call out like for currently, for example, the number of federated identity credentials that you can create associated with a managed identity, there is a restriction on that. You can only create like 20 of them. So today, the workload identity cannot be used. AKS workload identity is not very conducive to being used like at scale. So they are kind of making changes to the way the
Oh,
workload
right now
identity.
there's a limit and they want to remove it.
Yeah, there
Oh,
is a
okay.
limit, and as part of all of that work, they are going to they have like a new feature thing coming in called identity bindings. And like as part of those integrations, they are considering like tightening how workload identity functions, and they want to kind of bind it as we discussed, like to a pod, to a node, or a network, TPM, some things like that, so that the workload has to be bound somewhere. So those tighter controls will be coming in with those features. They might not break the existing workflows immediately, but like once those integrations come, they'll definitely try to push customers to use the newer workflows, which would
Right.
automatically cause them to move away from the current, like the loose semantics that are there. So that was one. I think the
Yeah.
second concern was also the ability, giving the controller the ability to like mint service account tokens for like all pods, or like because of that broad permission in the RBAC, right? So that was also like a red flag that a controller should not have that level of access. Obviously, the cluster admin has to, or whoever has to opt into it. But I think that was one more concern. Yeah, I think that was it. I think they said I did ask them if they'd be able to join our meeting today, just so that we can have some more discussions with them. But I think it was a little
Yeah, I
early
would
for
really
a
love
few of
to,
them. Yeah, it was a
like,
little early. Mhm.
what I
Yeah.
want to to ask is like if this could be rolled out like EKS did, like because they into 2019 they released IAM roles for source accounts, and 2023 they rolled out EKS pod identity, which is the one that has the tighter controls and everything, and the one we cannot use in our feature. We can only use IAM roles for source accounts, and the setup right now for Azure is identical to IAM roles for source accounts, and in the sense that you have to register the issuer URL of the cluster to like create this this provider in the IAM system of Azure. So it's very similar. It's the exact same thing, I would say. So it would make sense to this like new feature be a new one. Like in what EKS pod identity does is they have this open source daemon set that Lee found, and we looked at the source code. This daemon set calls a new API, and that API is the one that exchanges the Kubernetes JWT for the Azure Access Token. And that's the one that looks at the pod claim. In this case, the AWS credentials, right? Not Azure Access Token. So this like, and there's the difference, like when you use this feature, then you also don't have to create the cluster issuer URL yourself, right? It's integrated. So this like, I think this gives the two options to users, and then they can just like choose to opt in into, because you know at the end of the day, what we're trying to offer here is the best experience for users and improving security, right? What we want is to reduce the amount of permissions that you have to grant, right? We like, instead of one Azure identity that has access to the resources belonging to all the tenants, you can have multiple identities that only have access to the resources the tenants, like each tenant has its own identity with access only to the resources belonging to that tenant, right? So we're just trying to improve the least privilege principle here and still give users the best experience possible. So I really hope we can hop on a call.
I don't know
Yeah, I
how
mean,
this has been discussed before. Sorry, DT, I just wanted to mention something before we lose this topic, which is with regard to the concern about the scope of verbs and resources that the Flux controllers have for impersonation or token create. Token request on or create service account token. Like because we use the service account verb, that resource is namespaced. And right now we are using a cluster role. But it's possible to deploy Flux in a way where the controllers do not have any impersonation or token request creation at all. And
you can list exactly which namespaces you want the controller to be able to impersonate.
You don't even need to do that. Like you can just leave it to the user to like have the user like say that Flux can impersonate the thing that they made. But it adds a lot of like configuration. And it's a decision that was made a really long time ago with regards to the user impersonation stuff. But it doesn't mean that like we have to keep that shape per se for a cloud impersonation or cloud token creation.
I think we would like to, right?
It's definitely like the easiest UX for people, right? But it's just like if Azure like wants to deploy Flux in a way where like there's extra docs or something because the Azure identity team doesn't agree with this for the managed service, right? Like it's possible to just rip that permission out of the manifest and then just put it on users. Like we have the upstream distribution, which is like the documented way to run the software, but like you can modify the software. So
yeah. I also reached out to the external secrets CTO today and had a chat with him. As I told you, right? We discussed this. Like I invited him for the call, if you can make it happen. So
So like about that, So they asked that we can just join the SIGOT. So I think that happens twice a month. The next one is on Wednesday, 21st May. So I think this agenda is usually open. I checked, we can just put our name down, and then it's like Wednesdays at
Oh,
11
so we
a.m.
can have a topic
PST.
there.
Yeah, it's like similar to our model, but like Wednesdays, 11 a.m. PST. If you want, I can put our names down and we can discuss with them. Actually, they have another project called the K8 SIG Secret Store Sync. I don't know if you all have seen that, but they used to use a similar model like us over there, where there's a service account name which is associated with the workload identity. So that project would also be like a reference project, I think, for us if we wanted to see how they evolve with these changes to like workload identity. But there is a project out there also authored by the this team, which is and it's following a similar model as us. It's just that for going forward, I think they want to make these changes so we cannot kind of count on those working indefinitely.
Yeah. I
One
mean, I'm
follow-up.
still like, I'm still like asking for a chance to change their mind.
Yeah, I think
Just
we can
do
show
it.
up on in that meeting and
Yeah,
we can definitely have a chat. I think the folks I spoke with, one of them is like the chair of that meeting and the other is like the lead.
cool.
So they are all available there and we can chat with them. Yeah.
And I am not asking for like Azure workload identity to stop evolving and be more secure. I'm just asking for a path where we can give the choice to users and pretty much do something like AWS did, right? They give them both choices. The more secure one is the one that is enabled by default. They have to opt in into the other one, which is IAM roles for source accounts. And yeah, so I think this is basically what I want to ask from them is like, please do something, evolve in the way that EKS did.
Mhm.
If you are going to put it like that, zero
I
chances.
know, I know, I know.
Like,
But
maybe get Lee on that meeting and let him talk. I don't know if you
yeah,
go to the
maybe
Azure team and say, hey, you should come
there's
to
a nameless
AWS,
cloud.
you are going to be slapped on the face and kicked out of the meeting. I'm joking, but if I would have been in their position, that would have been my reaction. So yeah, you need to
Yeah, I
have
mean,
some kind
maybe say
of
nameless cloud or just a path where you don't break the feature you already have, and you can offer something that is more secure by default without breaking what you already have. Maybe along those lines, I guess.
Okay, too much talk
Yeah, by the
about
way,
IAM.
Deepti, I think you would like to know that we re-enabled the integration tests for Azure. They're running on my account right now. So I'm donating to Flux a month of integration tests for Azure, and we'll probably see if we can find a sponsor for that if the costs are not too high after this month.
So does this test run like on needs to run on every CI, or is it just before a release that we typically kind of? I remember Sunny used
It's
to run
running
it
every day.
before
It's a schedule, yeah.
every day.
Yeah, like the other two, like
Mm.
GCP and
Yeah,
AWS.
so we have 3 cron jobs, basically. We have only enabled one for the package, but so how we do it for Google, for example, we have it in a package, runs on a cron job, runs after you merge something. You can run it manually, and we usually run it for pull requests that are touching that area. Then in source controller, in source controller and image reflector controller, we also have cron jobs, and we trigger it if you touch the part of the code that deals with authentication. And then in Flux 2, that's where we have like this whole end-to-end test suite that we run it on the pull request when our bot opens the pull request for bumping the versions of controllers, and we run all of them on Google and AWS. So yeah, depending on the month, if it's the month where we do the release and we do open a bunch of PRs and we do a lot of work around this, the cost can go higher. but let's say for a whole year, it should be. Let's see if we bankrupt Mateus or not by the end of the month.
You said we have something in source
Is
controller?
it possible? Is it possible to set a spend limit in Azure, or they are doing the same stuff with AWS, where they take all your money and you can only cry? Dipti, do you know?
I'm not sure. I know they used to have credits and things. Are those not available to this account, like some monthly credits type of thing, where you can those like up to a certain limit, it's free, and then kind of it goes after that.
No. We didn't manage to get any credits from Azure. From AWS we did, and Google, but Azure no, it was not possible. I couldn't find anyone that would want that. I mean, the reaction from your team was, "We are running end-to-end tests, so why would you care?" Which I feel like is very wrong. Running end-to-end tests after a release beats the point of end-to-end testing. So.
Let me ask, but it's not in my control, unfortunately.
Yeah, I know.
But I can
please.
ask you.
Used to have access to Gabe Monroy, who had a discretionary budget for this kind of stuff. But I don't think we ever actually got that connected with the Flux team, but he doesn't work there anymore either.
Stephanie, you said we have something in source controller for integration tests.
Source controller?
Yeah.
Image reflector controller.
Yeah, image reflector we do. I thought you
Let
said
me
something about source
check.
controller as well. I don't see anything there.
Right.
From an Azure credits perspective, I feel like asking Ashley McNakamara from GitHub, at least how to get that. I bet she would know.
Yeah, I'm at the beginning of the next month, I'm joining a program with GitHub. And in that program, there was something written about we can give you access to a pool of Azure credits. And we'll see how it goes. If we can get those from there.
Yeah.
But anyway, we don't even know how much we are spending, so we are going to use Mateus' credit card and see how much we are spending.
Would definitely
in 1
turn off
month.
those AKS clusters once we are done. I think if you keep them running, I think they end up charging you a lot more.
Tell Mo how generous I'm being for Azure in the Flux project.
No, we have a purger that we run all the time, and even if Terraform destroy fails, we have another job that looks for labels and everything and tries to delete all the things that are older than 1 hour. Right? We've built a lot of stuff into this because Google didn't give us too much money. So we were very constrained on the Google budget. So there is a lot of code in the end-to-end test suite that tries to delete in all sorts of ways everything that was provisioned as soon as the test either succeeds or fails. When it fails, it's tricky. Yeah.
How does the Google model work today? So like you have like X amount of cash that you can add on your account, and then up to that amount it reuses that, and then.
So we have an account provisioned by Google itself. They added us as admins. The maintainers that are also the org admins in Flux. So not everybody has admin there for obvious reasons. Then we have created some service accounts in there that are used in Terraform to provision a different account, which is very restricted. And that account is with OEDC, we allow GitHub Actions to create clusters, create Google Vaults, everything, load balancers, whatever. and we don't have a credit card, our credit cards in there. That's Google takes care of it, and we have a budget per month, basically. And that's how the Google for AWS is not like that. They don't have this thing in place. They personally gave me some vouchers that cover way more than what we spend for a year, and that vouchers go into the AWS account, and you have credits basically that you can spend. But the problem there is that you can't use them more than twice on an account. So you need to, after the credits expire, you have to delete everything, recreate everything from scratch, and so on. That's so with the Google approach is the best, because they said, okay, if we are going to donate it to the project, we are going to manage it, and like we didn't have to create the account. They created and they own the root account, which is great, right? I mean, it's how it should be done. But yeah, that's how we have it with these two. And yeah, I didn't find the person to renew my AWS credits. They expired, and I didn't pay much, like $50 or something. So we are not running crazy long end-to-end tests. It's more about what costs the more is creating a cluster and wait for the cluster to be ready. And then we push Helm charts, we push container images, we push Flux artifacts. Then we create, all the Flux objects on the cluster, and that's very fast. And then we verify, are these in source controller? Can this be reconciled? Can we decrypt the secret with KMS? Then Terraform destroy the cluster, destroy the KMS instance, destroy the repositories, and that's it. So I would say more than 98% of the time is waiting for the cluster to be created. And then, I don't know, in maximum, 3 minutes, 4 minutes. I don't think it's that even long to do all the Flux tests, because we just apply everything in parallel. And
yeah, it's even less, like two minutes.
I mean, it's downloading Helm charts, decrypting a secret. It's very fast. But yeah, anyway, creating a cluster, depending on AWS, I think it takes the longer, like 20
I have a
minutes.
question. I didn't look much into the code, just a bit of these integration tests, but if I understand correctly, during the test, we don't store the Terraform state anywhere, and we just destroy it after the test run. And the cleanup job, it does not use Terraform because there's no state, right? It just tries to list everything and delete everything, right?
So with Terraform, we label all the things. Like all the clouds out there have these labeling or annotation, or however you want to call it,
the
right?
labels,
yeah. And we set a fixed label from Terraform on all the objects that we created during the test. Then in the purge part, we list all the objects that are labeled like that, and we looked at their when they were created. If they were created more than 1 hour ago, given that a test cannot go more than half an hour, we delete everything that is older than 1 hour, right? That's how I do it. And so far, I didn't get a crazy AWS or Google invoice. We never went over the budget. So this purger that Sunny wrote is actually very good, and it never misses. If you label all things, then you clearly know how to delete them. And all the clouds allow you to list by label. It's basic stuff. Otherwise, you don't have control over any
we
cost.
have specific code, like in the Reaper, we have code that is like for each kind of resource we create. Let's say we do tests for container registries, we have code for container registries. If we do tests with buckets, we have code for buckets, and so on.
Yeah, right? But we
Okay.
so we use around 4 services, so it's
Yeah.
not that complex, right? We have
Yeah.
a form of KMS, we have a form of S3, a form of Git, and a form of container registry, and the cluster. 5 things, right? This is it. So you need to
And
query
PubSub.
5. I don't
Oh,
think
we
we have
don't
end-to-end.
we don't test that. Yeah, we don't have integration test for that, I guess.
We don't have. We
Yeah.
have it for Azure, and you'll see in Flux 2, the Azure end-to-end test is highly complex. I don't know if we should enable that back on. We can discuss about it some other time, because that takes a very long time. It does a bunch of stuff. It verifies events, pops up. It's quite complex. We worked so much on that. Anyway, is what it is.
So I was thinking about something. Would you guys be able to discuss, like, can we discuss quickly, maybe? Because I want to have a fallback plan. If we just get blocked in the feature, like, I I I I just want to have in mind what we're gonna do to keep supporting the feature. And I don't want to have to do it. I just want to have a plan. So I have a few options in my head. How do you guys feel about listening?
Guys and not
And
only
girls,
guys.
yeah, sorry.
I don't know, Diptit, are you a girl? Maybe girl is also not the right word. Girl, I think it's under 80 or 18, right? Woman.
I'm not taking any offense. You can say, guys, no worries.
Okay.
I got educated from the Kubernetes Slack this week about this. I said guys, and then the Slack said, hey, don't
So
use
you
that
didn't
word
learn
when you.
anything, man.
For you,
Yeah.
it's good to
Didn't
be
learn anything.
inclusive.
Yeah, I'm trying. I'm usually good at that stuff. I usually say them. I don't say she or he. I say them. So I'm good at that. I just
So
have to
instead
get
of
used to it.
guys, you can say folks.
Folks. Yeah.
Yeah, and then it's like inclusive.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
don't know. Folks is that's what
Yeah.
I switched to a long time ago. I don't know. Is it politically in any way to say
Folks.
folks? It has no
Folks.
connotation, right? It's
No,
neutral.
folks is not political. Y'all is kind of weird for some people. It's like
Yeah, no.
Y'all
Um,
sounds like slang.
a little bit like
Yeah. Is it
casual
Texan,
or
right?
southern. But
Is it Southern?
I'll let you in on my hack. As far as being friendly in comms is it. I always just say friends. And then the really nice hack about that is it forces everybody to be your friend. So, you know,
Okay.
uh, yeah.
So would you
Here's, I think,
folks
like
be
let's
willing to
let's go
listen
ahead
to my plans?
and hear some of the things you wanted to chat about. And
I can't
Okay.
listen to your plans, Mateus. It's about 12 more minutes before the meeting
I'll
should
try
end.
to
And I
be
don't
quick.
want to spend 3 hours. Like, how about you write it down in
Okay.
a Flux discussion that we can then point the 6 security people to it and so on.
Cool. Okay. I
mm,
mean, maybe we don't need to discuss. I can just outline really quickly. I promise it will take much less than the 12 minutes.
Okay, go.
Okay. Okay. So have two things in mind. Okay. One, I am trying to leverage Kubernetes Service Accounts, GWTs. That's the API I want to offer to users. I want to make it consistent with what it has always been and what all the workload identity features are implemented, right? It serves accounts. And two, none of these options will sound good, okay? None. I have 3 plans. All of them are bad in some way. So have this in mind. Okay. So the first plan, and simplest one, is we find or build an OIDC provider, an open source one, that we introduce as a dependency for Flux. We're going to tell Flux users, deploy this thing in your cluster, expose it through Ingress. And that's what's going to issue, that's what's going to allow you to use this feature, okay? Why this is bad? Because it's a dependency. Flux does not have external dependencies, right? You don't have to deploy anything in your cluster to use Flux features, right? So this is why this is bad. But it would
Any
work.
ingress, which is horrible.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, like it like what so the second option is, instead of being a dependency, we build this ourselves. We have now, instead of 6 pods, we have 7. One that is exposed through Ingress, only to answer to OIDC, right? It's very, like, it's not resource intensive, and the what's gonna back this issuer is a KMS service. So we tell users to create an asymmetric key, and this pod will get the public key to answer to HTTP requests from outside, okay? And the 6 Flux or the whatever controllers that use workload entity, they will use the KMS API to sign. So 2 APIs, one that gets the asymmetric key for the issuer pod, for the provider pod, and the controller pods use the API to sign JWTs. Then the JWTs that we issue will have essentially, like, besides all the standard claims, of course, 4 claims, okay? Issuer is the public URL of the pod, ISS, right? Subject is going to be system : service account : namespace : name. So it's exactly like the subject claim of the tokens issued by Kubernetes for service accounts. Then there's a cluster claim, which is the issuer of a JWT issued by Kubernetes, which you can get by simply opening up the file with the Kubernetes service account token that Kubelet mounts in the controller. You can open up that JWT, you get the issuer, you put that on the cluster claim. And then the fourth claim is system : service account : flux system : the name of the service account of the controller pod, like source controller or something. So we basically give 2 issuers and 2 service accounts. Then users can do all sorts of assertions in the trust policy on the cloud provider side. When they are allowing a cloud identity to be impersonated by an identity like this, they can assert all things, right? They can assert a controller, they can assert the cluster. Most importantly, the ISS issuer is the public URL that we expose. So yeah, that's it. So my first 2 plans are, we find an open source project that is already doing that, and we introduce this as a dependency for Flux, which I think it's horrible because Flux does not have dependencies. And the other option is we build this ourselves as part of Flux in a way that it's not a dependency. But you can see how complex this is, right? It's a non-trivial amount of work. So this is why it's bad. It's because it's not a simple thing. And we're now relying on KMS and everything, right? Okay, these are the 2 first options. And the last option is, by the way, one that the external secrets guy is ready to implement right now. But it's bad. Is creating a dead pod for the service account in the cluster with 0 resource requests, right? And limits. It's a pod that literally just sleeps all day, right? This pod is created with the service account that you need. And with the existence of this pod in the cluster, then we can issue the tokens. And then you can make the pod, the owner ref of the pod can be the service account. So if the service account is deleted, the pod is deleted as well automatically by the Kubernetes garbage collector. So I think there's a way to do this without consuming resources in the nodes of the cluster, right? With not requesting CPU or memory. And with garbage collector and everything, and making sure that this pod will listen to the termination signal, right? So it has to sleep, but it has to die if it gets a termination signal immediately. So this may be a dump dash bash script, or may also be a binary that we ship in Flux that does exactly that. That will.
It's already in Kubernetes. Is the how is it called, the sleep?
The pause container.
Yeah, the pause container, exactly. We already have all of that.
Yeah.
So
the guy from
container
External
does.
Secrets said the same thing. Yeah, it said that this is already something Kubernetes does. So that's a solution. I mean, that solution is, I mean, it's obvious why it's bad, right? We're creating pods. That's crazy. But at least the setup is much simpler.
Is pod identity.
It's unfortunately the kinds of things that Mo was talking about, though, are making it so that like managed infrastructure would only accept that token over the network interface, like over a TCP connection to the STS service from that pod. Like it's not just hardware attested root of trust, it's also the network attested.
Okay, so if we do this, they're gonna block it as well.
I mean, ideally, like anything that is actually supposed to be the pod identity, they make it as hard as possible to export that token. Like the whole problem with JWTs is replay attacks. Like you're not supposed to be able to use that secret for something for the audience it's not supposed to be for. So like if the audience is the pod and you use the token outside of that context, that's a replay attack. This is one of the benefits of using X509 over JOTs, right? Is X509, you have to have the private key material in order to talk at all. And anybody listening on the line or getting information from the session in the middle or extracting something from the file system, unless it is the private key, which is usually through some KMS service, like you cannot replay that credential because it's cryptographically secure. Whereas the JWT is a signature instead, you know, that is the credential instead of the credential itself.
Yeah, so we can like label the solutions I listed as in the ones that are still trying to abuse the correct design, right? Like this one, the pod one. And the others are like they're not abusive, right?
No. They're pretty much recreating the same sort of system for what it's intended for. Yeah.
Yeah. So basically I would like to know if let's say Azure blocks the feature, would we ever be willing to choose one of these two options? Like, would do you guys? Sorry, do you folks see us see us implementing this? Any of these two, like the built-in one or the
If we find a sponsor to pay us for many months working on this and maintaining it, sure. If not, no way we are going to ever do this in Flux. Like, why wouldn't we work on Flux Dev Helm release that everybody wants for years, and we are going to all of the sudden build Spiffy into Flux just because, I don't know, we have 3 issues on GitHub on people asking why they can use the service account for any, we didn't have any requests for Azure. no Azure user ever requested this feature. We only had this request from Google users. And with Google, it works great already what we have, right? So I'm not for investing any of our time.
So yeah,
moving
the
forward
answer is
after we implement.
it depends, right? It depends on the demand and the resources we have.
Sure. If Azure puts a team of people to implement Spiffy and Spire into Flux, yeah, we'll review and
Deepti?
approve those. But I don't think Azure has any interest into doing that.
We are also
Yeah.
They are
driven by
building
what the
Argo as a
customers
service.
ask,
So
right? I think if there is customer
Yeah.
demand, then it'll flow through us, and then it'll be Mhm.
Yeah.
There's
Yeah. So if
sort
any
of
Azure users cry out for this, I'll send them your way, Deepti.
there's kind of like a fourth and a fifth option here that we were talking through. Right now, the fourth option, Matthias and I were talking through it. It's like using things like session tags on AWS. It's a very specific feature that only AWS IAM supports, which is
And
decorating.
AWS is the only one that is not going to block us.
Well, yeah, hold up. Just let me get to the point on this. Deepti was talking about how Azure Workload Identity is implementing new IAM features in order to make their implementation function. I can imagine that something like with this identity binding would be the kind of thing that would have session metadata associated with the token. Or also things like what you're talking about with stuff like claims inside of the JOT and the configuration of how the provider accepts the JOT. There can be things there to get the namespace specificity. So if Azure is building new IAM features, we might be able to use those with the direct cloud integration. Fifth is with Flux in its current state, it's possible to deploy Flux horizontally sharded with a multi-tenant architecture. There's like maybe you could write a couple of Flux operator features, but even if you didn't, you can write Flux manifests today that
Yeah.
a single installation
And
of Flux with multiple controllers with workloads that are segmented by namespaces, where your custom resources at the admission layer are forced to label shard into tenant controllers. So, like, if somebody needs this right now, we don't have to build
Yeah.
anything. Like, there is an answer for somebody who wants to use this stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's
yeah, the
Uh-huh.
only thing we are missing in terms of automation for this in Flux operator is generating dedicated service accounts for each
Shard.
service. Why we didn't do that, and also not in the upstream Flux where we tell people how to shard it, was due to the fact that if it's a cluster, it probably connects to a single container registry assigned to that cluster, and forcing now to do bindings for all the service for all the source controller shards is too much, right? But as you said, we can add the flag tomorrow. It will take us 20 minutes to implement it. It's so simple. It's like a customize. We remove whatever in the customized patch and we let it create service accounts with the shard suffix. And then we document and tell people, hey, if you really need this type of hard multi-tenancy with sharding, you can create IAM bindings for each shard. And with a simple Kubernetes policy now, because it's built into Kubernetes, a validation policy, you can actually enforce, or if it goes to this namespace, it needs to have the shard label, right? So it's quite straightforward and low effort to implement it. It will use way more resources, of course, right?
Yeah.
That's the magic of what we've built here with Mateus, is that you don't need to spin up multiple pods, and we can implement all things like we do with impersonation through Kubernetes API.
Yeah, and you only have one concurrent queue and everything,
Yeah.
right? Instead of multiple controllers competing. Yeah.
Yeah. Multiple controllers. I mean, when you run more than one pod, you pay more, right? In terms of everything, nodes, resources, everything is more expensive.
Yeah.
API calls, everything, right? Watchers. So it's a trade-off. But
Do we
I
support
think
sharding for all controllers?
Yeah.
Do we support?
No, we didn't do it for notification controller because it was useless. Because notification controller, you can just increase the number of replicas and it will do load balancing for events through the service. But we can easily do it in notification controller. I mean, it's just a label selector we've implemented everywhere. If we want to shard notification controller tomorrow, it's very low effort. It's so easy. Because we have this in place in all the other controllers, right? So
including the image ones.
Yeah. Yeah. I almost forgot about the sharding stuff, and Lee is totally right. I mean,
yeah,
that's the way you can do it today with fiddling a little bit with the customized patches we already have in place. So
my opinion on the spiffy thing is obviously like it's high effort to implement. What you described with the jot stuff and the complexity there, all the cons associated with it, are it's complicated. I think the pro of it is we do not have to build that in a bespoke manner. We can do it in a standards compliant way, which potentially has a big upside for the longevity of the project, like a decade from now. Is like I can see in 10 years it would make sense somewhere along the 10-year timeline for Flux. Like it's almost required. Like you're gonna need a spiffy implementation. And the jot stuff that you're talking about is basically one half of a spiffy, or it's one way to do it.
What's jot? Jot. What's jot?
JWT. Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know.
Yeah, I honestly I didn't
it's
like
slang.
When I first learned it.
Slang.
If you read the paper, they're like it's pronounced
jot, yeah.
But yeah.
Oh, I didn't know. Cool. Jot.
Yeah, JWT. Yeah, I like it better that way, honestly. But
like JSON.
Yeah. Anyway, the
JSON.
Like the JWT stuff is part of the spiffy spec as an alternative to X509. And they talk about the trade-offs of picking either one. And yeah, there's just a couple of things like the format of the SVID, the spiffy verifiable ID. It's like it has
Okay.
a specific.
I mean, I'm happy there's no like hard blockers on the idea, right? Like
No,
as we
it
said,
makes
it's a
perfect
thing
sense to
about
do.
resources and
Yeah.
demand, right?
When we talked about this at KubeCon, at like the very first moment I read the first paragraph of your RFC, I was like, oh, we should add spiffy to Flux. So yeah. I think it makes perfect sense. It's like that's a function of time thing.
Yeah, I have to deep dive on spiffy to understand exactly the like what the standard says, because this idea was like just out of my mind from understanding how OIDC works.
Yeah. The Kubernetes service account system itself is basically an implementation of spiffy.
Yeah.
So like you intuitively understand how it's supposed to be built, and you're copying it and you're basically implementing spiffy. It's just there's like a couple of spec things in there. And all of the major clouds will always support authenticating via spiffy. And it's more than just Azure. It's like DigitalOcean and Alibaba Cloud and like all of that. So
all the service meshes, right?
Yeah.
All of them are built on the same idea. Like if you look at Istio, it was called Citadel, their first spiffy implementation a long time ago when I started.
The service meshes implement spiffy? They build.
Yes. Yeah, like Istio uses spiffy to generate all of the MTLS, all of the X509 certs that establish the MTLS connections.
Yeah.
One of the reasons why the service meshes use MTLS is because there's JSON Web Token is designed for the web. It's designed to like share like those public keys like over HTTP from somewhere else so that you do not have to distribute them. So that's like a distribution mechanism. And then like it delegates the verification by storing the credential as a signature, and that all of that machinery has cons. Like it's very flexible, and that you can like move the ownership around, the ownership of signing, the ownership of verification, and the ownership of like discovery. But all of that extra mechanism is extra attack surface and trade-offs. And it's one of the reasons why X509 is nicer is it has logistics problems, but it has security benefits. So
Cool. Okay.
Okay, we are out
I'm
of
not so
time.
desperate anymore. I was kind of thinking, okay, I did this all for nothing.
no, this is never going to go to waste. This is very important work for the project.
Yeah, and if it works on Google, it's enough, right? To have one provider. It works. AWS the second. If Azure drops it, that's it. It's like we did our best, and that's about it.
Lee, will you help me be a nice person with them in the call and not say
I
shit like
will happily take responsibility for that.
thank you.
For one, I've worked with a lot. Like Mo used to be my coworker. I was a DevRel person for Pinniped at VMware. So, um, yeah, that's an easy yes for me. I'm happy to help advocate for the project from a communication standpoint.
Thank you.
It's really important that people receive all of the work that you've done over this like last 2 years, like building all the context on this positively. So, and, uh,
Cool.
it's a wasted opportunity for the entire ecosystem if like the most important integration point from a GitOps perspective, if all of the engineers who work on those cloud integrations don't see the value of Flux, because the value is very evidently and empirically there, right? All of the users are there. It's just that like there's a bunch of different roles in the ecosystem, right? And it's the product person is going to understand what the users need out of this more than the authentication and authorization engineer at Google Cloud.
Cool.
Uh,
Thanks.
So next
All
week
right.
I'm off. I'll see you all in 2 weeks.
Are you off
And
tomorrow already or?
Yeah,
Okay.
tomorrow I'm flying to Italy. So when I get back that week, we are going to try and kick off the release, and we'll see where we get with it. But there is
Are you gonna meet Francesco there?
no, Francesco is in North Italy. I'm going south.
Oh, okay.
It's very fun. Very fun. I'll not be able to meet him. Yeah. Okay.
Cool.
It was nice seeing you, Dipti, and we should talk about KubeCon and see if we can do a CFP together. Keep an eye on the website and see when they announce the maintainers track. Lee, they are doing the maintainers track announcement later, right? It's not with the whole with the
yeah, that's typical.
normal CFP.
There is a CFP
Right.
for it now, just like before
And
but yeah.
but it's all moved couple of weeks, right? Okay.
Is it expected to show up in the list at least that CFP is open later? Because in the tracks, I did not see any maintainer track.
So
It
they
shows up
never.
later as well. Okay.
Yes,
Or it
it's
doesn't
always
get published.
later. We don't
Separate
know.
process.
Yeah.
It's a different process. They send emails to project leads and stuff like that. So Lee, please next week if you receive any email about the maintainers track, give us a shout out on Slack.
And I
So
saw
we are aware of it.
news about FluxCon.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah,
awesome.
we are doing FluxCon at KubeCon NA. Yeah, it's the first ever FluxCon.
There was somebody who
we-
asked, what FluxCon, GitOps Con, what's the difference? I
Argo
was
will
so
be
happy
very
to
mad
hear
at
that. I was so happy
that.
to hear it. Yeah, it's they are synonymous,
GitOpsCon
man.
is, yeah, it's all Argo.
The GitOpsCon schedule is up too now. It's in less than 2 weeks.
There's the remote one.
Yes, GitOpsCon EU.
What ended up happening with the keynote slot there? The first one, is it filled or no?
I am not sure. I looked at the schedule. It looked very understated. I don't know how the word is going to get out about GitOpsCon, actually.
Mm-hmm.
We'll see. Yeah, so I'll see you in 2 weeks and we can discuss more about FluxCon, KubeCon, and everything. The deadline is 27, right, for the normal CFPs?
For the
50?
normal CFPs, yeah, 27.
And 27 Tuesday. Okay.
Less than 2 weeks, yeah.
Yeah, I'll try to submit something around Flux MCP for the normal track.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
But
the
maintainer track is
big
completely
AI
separate.
track.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there is an AI track, right? So
Yeah.
I can submit something there.
It always ends up being a big room too. So
Nice. Yeah, but I'm guessing there'll be like 1 million CFPs, AI, me, you, whatever.
yeah, I
So
think
the chances to get in are 0.00001%. But anyway,
yeah.
it's worth the effort submitting a CFP. And for maintainers track, I really want to submit a joint talk with Dipti, get her to speak about Flux for the first time at QCon. That would be really awesome.
Probably FluxCon too. Yeah. Or at least to be visible. Make sure that Dipti and Azure's voice comes through at FluxCon.
Yeah. So FluxCon is half a day.
Mm-hmm.
So there are, I think, 6 talks. Yeah. The CFP is already open for that, I think. Francesco knows better. Anyway, is not, the deadline is not next week for the FluxCon, so there is not a huge rush. We can talk about it when I come back and have a plan. Okay.
Well, all of our travel policies are totally hosed at this point, but I can take unpaid time off to go to FluxCon. I definitely won't miss it.
Okay.
So
You need to be there, man. Come on.
if you're coming to the United States, I'm going to be there.
Yeah. Just
If they will allow me, I mean, I have a visa, but who knows? I'm Romanian. They can kick me out anytime. I'm joking. No, I think
just
it's
to
a
make
good
sure we
idea.
buy you lunch, King. Then. And,
Get the beer off completely so I don't look weird.
I don't know. Are you gonna match your passport photo then? Yeah.
Oh no. You're right.
You have
You're
to
right.
find an in between, right? You clean it
Yeah,
up.
yeah.
Yeah. So
But not completely correct. Yeah. Okay. I need to run.
thank
See
you,
you all.
friends.
Thank you so
Bye.
much. Really nice seeing you all. Bye.
See you guys. See you,
Yeah.
folks.